Thank you for joining me. Before I begin, I want to thank every single person who left a warm, supportive, and uplifting comment on my last post. I've been going through some pretty rough waters lately, trying to traverse this huge shift I feel in my attitudes and beliefs towards life and towards the divine. So I hope you know that all of this has been very nurturing. But what I really want to talk about in this video is how attentiveness towards spiritual, mystical, divine, even religious matters can actually be a roadblock to our own health and satisfaction. Am I healthy? That's a really good question to ask ourselves. Am I healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, interpersonally? Are my thoughts healthy? Is my presence feeling whole without all of these twisted aspects and aberrations? I think a lot of us, I know all of us cannot say that I am completely healthy. In fact, it is the twisted parts of ourselves, it is that which feels incomplete, which actually inspires us to go on a spiritual journey. I myself have wanted to reclaim a greater awareness. But I realized in my own life, and I have seen this in many people's lives, that such an intention can be followed with the wrong answer, the wrong antidote. Spiritual and mystical and divine matters, whatever we want to call them, all of these great principles about how the universe works and what we're doing in this life, all of it can be very, very beneficial and fun. But when we are too attached to the grandiose and not attentive enough to the mundane, we actually become very foolish and we become pretty unhealthy in our relationship with life. We can call ourselves light workers, indigo, rainbow children. We can even say we're living souls. For the religious-minded, we can say, well, I am a warrior in Christ, or this and that. And yet, just because we have this identity, does it really mean we are performing the greatest performance we could? And I'm not trying to sound like a perfectionist. It's just our belief in great spiritual things don't always translate to healthy habits. And it really has been getting to me for quite a while now. The fact that so many are so quick to talk about great, high and mighty things, and meanwhile, upon close examination, or not so close examination, these very people who profess such great, profound ideas are hurting. They're hurting in ways that can only be remedied through accepting our very human nature. All of us were babies at one point. All of us were children. All of us were adolescents. And at some point, we became teenagers and then adults. And adults are adulterated, aren't we? We've gone through many, many trials and tribulations. And it seems as if this world is not always conducive for our health. And because things are so difficult in life, I think a lot of us want to tap out into some other dimension or realm or heavenly sphere that we would rather focus on than the actual day-to-day, very well, sometimes boring happenings. Sometimes we get carried away, don't we? Sometimes we neglect very mundane perspectives on becoming better beings. I no longer am interested in defining my health in terms of some great spiritual dance I'm performing. Now, this is not to say that I'm not performing some great spiritual dance. Obviously, there's way more than meets the eye to this earthly experience. Obviously, there is a process many of us have been tapped into. What is this process? We could call it a journey into our higher self. We could call it a journey into true awakening. We could call it a path to heaven. It doesn't really matter what we call it. I know a lot of people think it does matter what we call this process, but as far as I'm concerned, what matters most is that we are being honest, that we are letting the tides of change help us rather than degrade us. I think what matters most is that we're being healthy in our approach towards life and towards ourselves and towards others. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression, and there is a lot out there that seems to inspire this lot of anxiety and depression. And it's very easy in this world of distraction to abuse the faculties of our minds and of our bodies and disallow ourselves from really blossoming into healthy beings. A lot of us turned to spiritual topics to get healthier. And you know what I found? I found I was actually becoming less and less healthy the more I was attached to this identity of a spiritual seeker. Now, I don't regret one moment of the journey I've been on. I've made many mistakes, and I've also learned how to tap into different frequencies, we could say, or different elements of my soul. But I found myself, as many of you can also relate, neglecting very crucial parts of my day-to-day life. And because of my attachment towards spiritual identity, towards some grand plan that I was certain was unfolding, I actually was becoming unhealthy. Yes, physically. I was fasting too much, way too much. I know I look a lot different right now, and some people have commented I look healthier. Well, I've been working at my health, not just physically, but mentally too. There's been a lot of conflicts that have erupted in my life, personally, with myself, and interpersonally, with others. And it's very easy to point the finger and to give up and to get very emotional about the problems in our lives. But what about the journey of the soul? Like, it all kind of comes full circle. I don't care how much we think we are grand souls on a divine quest. I don't care how elevated you or I think we might be or may have been. If we're not consistently excavating the parts of ourselves that are indecent or immoral or incongruent with health, then all we're doing is playing a game of avoidance So maybe if you find yourself in a similar situation, it's time to stop avoiding. Now, I've always been about this, but it's interesting how we can feel one way about our lives and yet say something else. There's a lot of self-deception that we can fall into. And honestly, I think a lot of the spiritual garbage out there actually helps us to avoid doing what will create more health in our lives in every way. There is a lot of spiritual garbage out there that is very ungrounded, that does nothing but pet the part of ourselves that's afraid of the practical day-to-day realities we're creating for ourselves. Am I healthy? That's the only question I think we need to be asking ourselves if we want to figure out what level of spiritual vigor we're actually resonating at. And this is probably not a very popular opinion because, well, we become attached to the ideas we find true or helpful or interesting in our lives. But again, from my own experience and from observing many people in my life and from afar, it seems as if because of our undealt trauma, it seems because we are all so broken on a fundamental level, we actually end up hurting ourselves more through our spiritual or religious affiliations. Now, I can't speak for everyone. This is just my opinion. Maybe you're watching this and thinking, I'm a bozo for saying spiritual concepts can be destructive, but they absolutely can. And what is not destructive is taking a look at the right here, right now of our lives. You know, it's necessary to have some, I never thought I would say this, humility when it comes to our own growth, because we don't know everything, and I certainly don't know everything. Now, I know there's plenty of criticism of me out there, and you know what? I don't blame that criticism. A lot of it is, well, criticizing me for acting like a know-it-all, or as if I can, you know, have this kind of spiritual ego or presence. And I'll be honest, I got very fed up with feeling that I had to uphold this self that is always engaged in mystical topics. I got very bored of feeling expected to be one way. And of course, it was never from the outside in. Everyone who watches my videos are spectators, of course. You don't call the shots, I do. I'm talking about my own perspective from within. I felt as if I had to uphold this magical, majestic being. And maybe I am, okay? But who cares? Who really cares? At the end of the day, if things don't feel healthy, then how can I claim to be this or that? How can I really suggest to God that I'm some great, benevolent, wise being? My greatest hero is Peter Pan. And I know many of you might be laughing on the other side of the screen. Why would Peter Pan be your greatest hero? He's my hero because he embodies the childlike wonder that I never want to let go of. We are adults. We become adulterated, don't we? All of us. have gone through many experiences, and it changes us. And sometimes it makes us a bit grumpy or bitter or disillusioned or fearful. And sometimes it seems as if all of it's out of our control. It's only the hands of time that's responsible. But time is actually ours for the taking. Time does not have to consume us, but only if we're willing to take a very mature, honest, all-encompassing look at our lives. And mental health is very much disregarded in the spiritual world. That's what I've seen. Because people seem to think their spiritual belief of choice or religious belief of choice has all of the medicine for our ills. The antidote could be more meditation. It could be an allegiance towards this or that heavenly figure. I'm not taking any of these beliefs out of the equation in full, because I know we as unique beings require different things, different remedies for our ills. But I have seen all too often a gross exaggeration of what these spiritual, religious, and mystical beliefs can do for a mind that is not settled in itself. All of us have experienced plenty of trauma in our lives, and it can be from our families, from our relationships, even from just being in this world. This is a very corrupt and abusive world. Amidst all of the beauty, there is much ugliness. And because of all of this trauma, I think it's only decent and healthy of us to try to get to a place where we can honestly examine our mental patterns, our physical patterns, our patterns of, well, lifestyle. I'm not claiming to know exactly how to do this, by the way. In fact, I think it's a process that automatically happens when we are fed up with a dysfunctional relationship with ourselves, with others, with the universe, maybe with the divine. It's only when we're actually ready to uncover the ugly parts of ourselves that we can really perform this shadow work and become mentally healthier. I think a lot of us are still very much children in how we relate to ourselves and to the world. Have we been completely healed from everything that we've experienced? And how do we heal? These are great questions. And I think in asking such profound, honest questions, the answers will come. And the answers are not always spiritual or mystical, or at least they don't sound that way. It's funny. There seems to be a disconnect between the real grandiose ideas and then the pretty mundane implementations we could perform in our own lives to make things healthier and better and more sound and more peaceful. As above, so below, though, right? We could interpret that as meaning whatever is happening spiritually is happening in your life. And so we don't even really have to focus on the immortality of the soul to heal ourselves. We don't even have to focus on the fifth dimension or ascending into our light bodies or even reuniting with some Godhead in order to heal.